On one final matter, at the end of the year, the Senate will bid farewell to a number of distinguished colleagues who are starting well-deserved next chapters. In the coming weeks, I'll single out a few of them for particular praise. It seems fitting to begin with someone whose retirement is a departure not just from the Senate, but from a long and honorable career on the national political stage. On the bingo cards of American politics, the governor of Massachusetts, senator from Utah, combination isn't known to be hit very often. But Mitt Romney's repeated success in public office is a testament to his transcendent appeal of his character. As it turns out, uncompromising honesty, earnest humility, and evident devotion to faith and family are as compelling in Cedar City as they are in Concord. Of course, a certain telegenic quality, dare I say, a presidential aura, doesn't hurt either. By the time our friend assumed the title of junior senator from Utah, his approach to life in the public eye combined the polished instincts of a professional who had played to win at the highest level and the independence and self-assurance that come only from unshakable convictions. For Mitt, the Senate was not a waiting room or a stepping stone. It was a capstone to a life in public service. And with the wisdom to discern where to devote his attention, he managed to cram more into 6 years than many colleagues fit in 12 or 18. He made himself a linchpin for bipartisan negotiations and wound up at the center of the effort that delivered major infrastructure legislation. He poured himself into worthy fights on behalf of his constituents, navigating everything from tribal politics to State Department bureaucracy with characteristic diplomacy. He called the Senate's attention more closely to the state of America's competition with China and the worthy demands of American global leadership. And he's met moments of enormous gravity with careful contemplation and utmost grace. The past 6 years will not be remembered as the Senate's quietest. Observers might have wondered what more a distinguished public servant like Mitt Romney had to prove in coming to Washington and putting up with the demands of this body. But that would be to misunderstand the way our friend has ordered his life. It wasn't about what he had left to prove, but what he had left to give. With that outlook, Mitt's been able to put even the most consequential business of public life in perspective. He reminds young visitors to the Capitol that the true currency of life is the people you love and spend your time with. He's quick to explain that his life isn't defined by the outcome of elections and that his deepest meaning comes from his faith and his relationship with his family. It doesn't take much to recognize how earnestly he means that. For one thing, we know that joining the Senate was, at best, a different second on the list of Mitt's most significant events of the year 2019. Behind celebrating 50 years of marriage to his sweetheart Ann. And when you factor in the birthdays of 25 grandchildren and counting, even the most significant career milestone is bound to fall off the list. Frankly, if we're our Mitt's Senate staff, I wouldn't worry too much about lining up my next job. A full-time grandpa to a brood as big as the Romneys is bound to need some extra hands for scheduling and advance work. Mitt and Ann's partnership is one for the history books. It's a reminder that when you spend your life with the right people, success in business or politics is just icing on the Cape. And when you ground yourself in firm beliefs, the winds of politics are easier to weather. As particularly moving him and Mitt's church instructs. Do what is right, let the consequences follow, battle for freedom in spirit and might, and with stout hearts to keep forth till tomorrow. God will protect you, then do what is right. So, Mitt, I want to thank you for devoting yourself to service and letting the consequence follow. May God protect you and your family as you write the next chapter.
I rise in congratulatory to my dear friend Mitt Romney, who I've gotten to know very well and became a very close friend to, with his wife Ann and their family, and Gail and I have become very close to each other and enjoyed our company. I've followed Mitt's career from afar for a long time, watching the success that he has had as he came up through the business ranks very successfully. As he came up through the business ranks very successfully, I watched that. I observed the Olympics. It was going to be embarrassing to the United States of America if someone didn't step forward and take care of the mess that got itself into. And lo and behold, Mitt Romney did that. And I was so thankful as an American, and also admiring as his skills to pull this all together, because I know it's a difficult task working with that Olympic committee. I watched these presidential campaigns, which I thought were absolutely electrifying, and I enjoyed it because I could see in his heart the public service was what it was all about. But I really didn't. My first encounter was Mitt as a former governor. We were both governors together at the same time. I was coming in 2004, he was going out in 2006. And he did this unbelievable thing about giving health care to everybody in his state. And it was just absolutely something phenomenal. So I called. Governors have a certain bond. Doesn't matter who you are, where you're from. If you've never met before in person, there's a bond. And I said, Mitt, tell me about this health care plan you have. And he said, Joe, I was able to do this, because he mentioned some of the good people that were smart and able to put it together. But I know one thing. Anybody that sits in a position, when you have good people around, someone has to assemble all of that material and put it in force. And Mitt was able to do that. And I told him this, I says, Mitt, I don't have the economy you have in Massachusetts, and I'd love to do something for my state. I don't know if you remember this or not. He said, Joe, there might be a way to work through your Public Employees Insurance Agency to let the small businesses buy in for group. And we were able to do something that's never been done before that helped an awful lot of small businesses and people who had no insurance to get insurance because of you. I remember that vividly. And then he comes to the Senate. And that's when my personal relationship, and I admired him from afar for a long time. And we just clicked. But I've got to say this, he was involved from day one. Day one, he hit the ground running. And Mitt brought so much institutional knowledge and so much basically support that he could bring to any conversation. He could bring you the contents, he could bring you the graphs, he could bring you everything that you wanted, and even a lot more that you didn't want. And he just engulfed us with all of this. And I'm thinking, one day we're in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, Mitt, I don't know if you recall, you kept telling us what wouldn't work because you had better facts than we had. And you were right, but we were trying to take your facts and work with the political situation we were in, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And here was Mitt. He came in, he says, here's why, here's what you should do. Here's why, here's what needs to be done. And he would explain everything to us. And I'm thinking, we're never going to get through this. We're just not going to get through this. One day we just made the final decision. We're going to do this. He comes in, he says, I like it. I'm thinking, what the heck we just go through? He just beat the living crap out of us for about 30 days, showing us how, giving us a roadmap of how to do something, and thinking that he wasn't going to agree with it. And, you know, his basic comment was this is better than what we got. We're moving the ball forward. And that, to me, is the clarity of purpose. The clarity of what he came for is to move the ball forward, make it better. Try to make a more perfect union. We know we couldn't be perfect. And Rob was in there working it back and forth, and everybody was moving. And Rob, and when we finally got to the end, Mitt says, "This is good. Can it be better? Sure, but it's good. Let's go." And that was the signal we needed, and it moved from there. Mitt, being a freshman 6 years, I've been here longer. Maybe I should have left 6 years ago, but I'm just telling you, you've made my life so much better in the Senate. I enjoyed it. My relationship, of course, with on both sides of the aisle, working together and bringing people together. But it has been just an absolute pleasure and a joy having you as a member of the United States Senate, the most deliberate body in the world, the strongest body in the world, the body that's supposed to make common sense out of things that sometimes don't make reason. And this body is much better off. This country is much better off because of your service here, and it's going to be missed. Most importantly, I'm a better person. I know that Gail and I are much more enriched because of your and Ann's friendship, and we appreciate that more than you know. I wish you only the best in the future. I wish you the best as far as what you're going to do, and I hope you don't change your phone number because we still need your advice no matter where we may go. God bless, my friend. Enjoy.
Mr. President, it is with a combination of pride and sadness that I rise to pay tribute to a truly extraordinary senator and a good friend, Senator Mitt Romney. I rise to praise his intelligence, imagination, and most of all, his integrity. That is what has marked and characterized his service throughout his life, but particularly here in the Senate. It's a day of sadness because I can't imagine the Senate without Mitt Romney. As a senator and as a governor, as a presidential candidate, as the founder of a successful business, as the savior of the 2002 Winter Olympics, and as a pillar of his faith, Mitt Romney has brought intelligence, knowledge, experience, and once again, integrity to every task he has undertaken. He meets every challenge with determination and a talent for bringing opposing sides together to forge solutions. He is always focused on getting to yes, on using common sense, and on achieving a result. I've had the pleasure of teaming up with Mitt on so many important issues, many of which he has mentioned. He was among the group of 10 senators who negotiated the Infrastructure and Jobs Act of 2021. From transportation to broadband, the most significant investment in infrastructure since the interstate highway system in the 1950s is bringing lasting benefits to our nation. Mitt was also key in crafting the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, landmark, common sense gun safety legislation that helps to protect America's children, keep our schools safer, and reduce the threat of violence across our country while preserving the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding gun owners. Mitt's unshakable belief that the American people must have faith in our elections and that they are free and fair was evident in his countless contributions to the Electoral Count Reform Act, which ensures an orderly transition of presidential power. Perhaps most impressive, his support for the Respect for Marriage Act demonstrated his fundamental fairness by helping to ensure that millions of loving couples in same-sex marriages will continue to enjoy the freedom, rights, and responsibilities afforded to all other marriages while strongly protecting religious liberty. And I give Mitt so much credit for forging the religious liberty protections that, combined with the protections for same-sex marriages, enabled the enactment of the Respect for Marriage Act. He was the one who drafted the religious liberty provisions that were so key. There are other areas where Mitt has been a key player and ahead of his time. From identifying the threat posed by Russia more than a decade ago, to pushing Congress and the administration to develop a strategy to better counter the challenge presented by China. Mitt has worked extensively on American foreign policy and national security. He has been a champion for Ukraine and a strong supporter of supplying aid to that brave country in its time of peril. Most of all, Mitt has reminded us over and over again of our $36 trillion national debt and the need to put our trust funds on solid ground. In fact, I think that a great post-Senate responsibility that Mitt could take on is a commission to look at all of those trust funds. He has proposed legislation to do just that. I can't think of a better person to head that commission. Mitt announced his decision to step down from the Senate with these words: "While I'm not running for re-election, I'm not retiring from the fight." As he and his wonderful wife, Ann, move on to this next phase of their lives, I'm sure that this outstanding leader will continue to fight for the core values that have made America great. Thank you, Mr. President.
I rise to object. I will not let this man go quietly into the night. I would ask for a unanimous consent to force him to stay in the Senate, but like all my unanimous consent requests over the last 10 years, none of them have ever passed. Case in point. I didn't necessarily expect to speak, but I found myself sitting there getting sad and angry that we are losing Mitt Romney. First of all, because we have, obviously, to the naked eye, so much in common. I am black, and Mitt Romney is black adjacent. Mitt Romney is a man of great personal net worth, and I'm a man of great personal net girth. But the reality is the more I served with Mitt Romney, the more I found myself hoping to have more in common with him. I watched somebody from this seat for years now give a master's class in what I believe America needs most. I ran for president because of this drive and this feeling that our nation was becoming too tribalistic. And I watched time and time again from this seat a person that put aside the desires for partisan adoration for a deeper conviction to stand up for our nation. I watched a man not confuse tribal celebrity with leadership significance. I watched time and time and saw it with my own eyes, him being harassed in airports and being scorned for taking principled stands that he saw as the best way to try to hold our country together. I disagree with him, even though I see him now and from one of his colleagues getting great approbation for a moment I remember when I was a mayor watching him run for president, where he was asked what the great national security threat is, and he said Russia. At the time, many people made fun of him, and I now have been classified briefings with him and other senators where his wisdom in perceiving a threat was not only appreciated, I literally saw in a classified briefing people applaud the insight of the man, but I disagree with him now. I disagree with him because, to me, the greatest threat to America, despite other comments that have been made here, including one of my esteemed colleagues yesterday who said, was our national debt. I think the greatest threat to America is our inability to come together as a country. Because when Americans are united, there's nothing we can't do. We can beat the Nazis, we can send someone to the moon. That indeed the greatest calling of our country right now is to put more indivisible back into this one nation under God. I've sat here for years now and I've watched perhaps someone show with clarity of purpose that I have got to be what his faith and mine call for. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are the people who stand in the breach. Blessed are the people who heal, who try to weave together the torn threads of our great nation back into a mighty whole. This body is lesser with this loss. When I heard the news that he wasn't running again, I wasn't happy for him and his family, and I know his values start with that core of faith and family. But I do worry about this body. I do worry about our nation. And the one thing that gives me hope is because the light that he has shined into this place will endure. And perhaps many of us, as he departs, will try our best, despite the forces that pull us apart, to try our best to pick up the work that he has left behind, to do more, to affirm a principle that he clearly has kept centered in his eyes, as is in the center of the aisle of this great institution, which is those words from a dead language, e pluribus unum. Mitt Romney, thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being someone who has inspired me to be better. And thank you for being a great American patriot.
Thank you, Mr. President. My folks are wondering why I'm sitting so close to Mitt Romney. He and I are seatmates. These are our assigned seats. But I told Mitt that I had not prepared a single comment, but I did want to come down and say a few things about him. And I hope that we use this opportunity and remember it over the next 2 years. Here's a question we could all ask her. We could all talk about and thank him for the incredible work that he's done, and to his staff, the problems he has caused for you by being so honest, so forthright, and so direct, right? How many times, Mitt, you can't answer it because I think it's against the rules, but how many times have your staff gone, boss, we wish sometimes you just weren't so forthright and honest? But that is who this guy is. And I've seen him. We've been battle buddies in a lot of the bipartisan efforts that have gone along. And he's the reason why some of them passed, quite honestly. Without his support and the support of a handful of others, stuff that has enduring generational value would have never happened. So I would ask everybody here who is thanking Mitt Romney for his role model behavior and the times he's been in the Senate and the times that I've known him. The first time I met him was in the December before his election when I was a fairly newly minted legislator. There's no reason why he would have known me or remembered that meeting, but I've been impressed with him since that moment in Charlotte, North Carolina when he was running for president. Let us go forward and hopefully ask ourselves as we come together as a nation, as we solve problems that can only be solved by people on both sides of the aisle coming together and taking the heat that comes along with that, let's ask ourselves over the next 2 or 4 years, what would Mitt Romney do? And let that be a guiding post for those of us who are going to be here who may be put into those situations to do right by this country. We're going to have one less person in Mitt here, but I believe it's in all of us to emulate what Mitt has done. And I hope that that's a part of a legacy that we will honor as he's gone. Now, finally, if you don't know about Mitt, I'm going to miss him for those reasons. Those are all legitimate reasons to miss Mitt. But I'm going to miss his fast wit and his ability to just call things quickly. Having a seatmate like that when you're in the middle of Votorama is gold, folks. Nobody's going to know that except for the conversations that we've had back here in the middle of the night. He's a good man, a good father, a great grandfather. I know I'm not supposed to do this either, but by show of hands, who shares DNA with Mitt Romney up there in the gallery? Yeah. Well, congratulations to all of you and the dozens of other family members who have to be hugely proud of Mitt Romney. I am. Thank you.
We got a vote coming up a little quick, so I'm going to be very, very, very brief. First of all, Mitt, you've been an incredible United States Senator. We're losing some good ones this time around, but you're at the top of the list. My father was born and raised in Utah, the state that you represent. My father and mother were both really good Democrats, but I'm going to tell you that they would have loved Mitt Romney. And the reason they would have loved Mitt Romney is because Mitt Romney is a realist, not an idealist. Somebody who looks at issues and tries to solve them, tries to get to yes, not to get to no, without giving up his principles. And your time here in the United States Senate, the gift that the good Lord gave to me to work with you and 8 other folks besides us on that infrastructure bill is something that I will never forget in this body. And you stood up time and time again and talked realism to all of us. And as you go out, just know that there's not a soul in here that doesn't know you're a man of faith. And I appreciate that because you exhibit that faith. You don't preach, you walk the walk. And I just want to say, as others have said before, because it's true, the United States Senate will be diminished because of your absence. And appreciate the opportunity to get to know you and work with you and get some stuff done.
Mr. President, one of the drawbacks of the end of a Congress is the need to say goodbye to departing colleagues. We're losing 2 Republicans this year, Senators Mitt Romney and Mike Braun. Mitt gave his farewell remarks yesterday, and they were characteristic of the man I've come to know. Humble, faith-filled, patriotic. Mitt's what I would call a character guy. He's guided by a moral compass, and he's not afraid to live by it. And in a world where being religious isn't always highly regarded, he's unapologetic about his faith. Mitt is also a big family guy. Like me, he married up, and he and his wife Ann have shared the good times and the tough times for now over 50 years of marriage. Hard to believe to look at him. But they say children keep you young, and Mitt has 5 sons and an incredible 25 grandchildren. A beautiful legacy all on its own. Mr. President, Mitt's professional legacy needs no recounting. He is well known as a successful businessman, a successful Republican governor of a deep blue state, and most recently as a successful senator. He may be leaving us after just 1 term, but that term was filled with an outsized amount of work. And he has more than earned his retirement.
Today, I wish to pay tribute and say thank you to a colleague from across the aisle, Senator Mitt Romney, who delivered his farewell address yesterday. I enjoyed meeting Senator Romney's family, his sons, his wife, at his reception the other night, and told him how much I respected him and how much we'll miss him in the Senate. On most issues, Senator Romney and I may have seemed like oil and water, but I've always appreciated him for his decency, his commitment to our country, and his willingness to work in good faith in a bipartisan way when the chance presented itself. And over the last 4 years, we found numerous ways to do just that. Senator Romney was a good partner with me on COVID relief legislation, despite much opposition from the other side, and he helped build consensus on the infrastructure bill. He also remains a fierce defender of the Ukrainian people. Finally, I will always appreciate that Senator Romney joined me alongside Senators Rosen, Kelly, and Cassidy on our mission to Israel in the aftermath of October 7th. So thank you, Senator Romney, and I wish you and your family a best chapter, in a new chapter in your life.
Now let's move slightly down from Montana to Utah, where the Senate is again losing an incredibly principled leader in Mitt Romney. In his 6 years in the Senate, and Senator Romney, as he gave his farewell speech, again acknowledged he's still just a freshman senator. Mitt led with an unshakable, tireless adherence to his values. It's not too hard to stand up for what you know is right if you agree with the rest of your team. But if you're bucking your party, and I've done that more than once, it requires tremendous bravery and sometimes enduring a deep loneliness and isolation. Even when it was hard, even when it was lonely, even when he endured harsh critique, Mitt never backed down from his principles. And I say this with deep admiration, even for the times when I disagreed with him, and there were many. We worked closely together on all of the bipartisan gangs. The effort to bring about the final COVID package under then President Trump, the infrastructure bill, the CHIPS bill, the notion of the Electoral Count Act. Time and again, Mitt was right there fighting for his values, but also realizing you got to get to yes if you can actually make things happen. The infrastructure bill in particular is an incredible achievement that's going to bring millions of homes in Utah to the broadband they deserve, the kind of road, rail, and other services that's essential. And during every step of these negotiations, as I said before, Mitt never wavered from his strong conservative beliefs. He can read a balance sheet. He's part of a very small minority. I'll include the presiding officer, probably less than double digits in this Senate, that can read a balance sheet. I count myself as one of those. He knows when numbers don't add up, and he'll fight to make it right. Our nation is stronger because of his smart, principled leadership. And again, while I understand that he and Ann have got other things to do going forward, he will still involved in our community. We're going to miss him here in the Senate.